Welcome to Tea Time, my friends, a place where I muse about my gender transition experience and in the process aim to comfort and inspire others to a greater level of self-awareness. I am Artemis, enjoying a cup of Bavarian carrot cake, courtesy of the Rosenvine Gift Company. And in this video, I'm about to discuss the concept of gatekeeping as it applies to the trans community and the importance of questioning transgender claims while being aware of the psychological hurdles that exist in human behavior that would prevent such practice. Said another way, I'm making a case for why we need to understand why people get so irritated when challenged on their experience, so we can continue asking the much-needed questions to keep a sense of sound reason, and not just blindly validate feelings. This topic came up very visibly in the comment section of my most recent video, where I called into question the validity of Elliot Page's claims of being transgender. And further, I refused to use the pronouns that she prefers. So it seemed to me that I needed to do some more unraveling for you all. I did another video about the very large subject of pronouns, link above. And we're going to get into the Elliot example later in the video, but first, since I aim to speak clearly, and at the risk of sounding too boring or clinical, let's quickly get our definitions for the day out of the way. For gatekeeping, the dictionary defines this as the activity of controlling and usually limiting general access to something. In this case, we're talking about inclusion into the transgender community. And the word transgender, as the dictionary says, denoting or relating to a person whose sense of personal identity and gender does not correspond with their birth sex, which is a very bare-bones definition, and sex. Yes, we're going to define that because it's 2022, and here we are. Sex. Either of the two main categories, male and female, into which humans and most other living things are divided on the basis of their reproductive functions. Okay. So based on these definitions, anyone who simply believes that their gender, which we learn does not have to include biological parts, is different than the sex describing their reproductive parts that they were born with, is transgender. This means that they don't have to have started hormones, sexual reassignment surgeries, or anything tangibly to back up the claim of being transgender. And here is where I think the trouble begins. Worse is that we do not have a defined diagnosis of transgender. No mechanism or test that we can point to that comes up with conclusive results. All we have is one of its supposed symptoms, which is gender identity disorder or gender dysphoria, and with there being no such thing as a male or female brain, we are left somewhat to infer the possibility that a lot of transgenderism is socially influenced. Personally, I'm holding out there being at least a few things like chimerism at play here that are not socially influenced, and instead are obscure physiological pathways for which science just hasn't discovered yet, but point being that we can't definitively say much about it. Not to mention, when talking about gatekeeping, it implies that there is something with definitive borders which has access restricted. But if you cannot define something, then that's kind of like a castle gate with no walls. You're standing there in front of a gate of which either side is totally open. Likewise, there isn't much a standard here for us to measure inclusion into the transgender identifier, and as such we currently have many people with different experiences claiming the title. Truth be told, there are many different and equally logically valid ways to go about the same end result, which is appearing and living as a gender that is opposite to your natal sex, that we can call transgenderism. Also, I'm not here to try to police inclusion into this group of individuals based only on my subjective judgment, or because I want to remain in some way special or superior to those whom I deem unfit for the title. That motivation and expression of the practice of gatekeeping is narcissistic and ego-centered, with no objective evidence to support its claims. And I think this is one example of another that I will bring up for why we seem as people to be gun-shy of others questioning us. We're used to it being done in a way that is meant to be threatening. So we end up with a society that is avoiding questioning the transgender claims because we've swung to the side of seeing questions as hurtful or transphobic, in this case. Essentially, we've removed this built-in safety switch of questioning what we're told and have completely opened the floodgates of accepting everything in the name of tolerance and avoiding hurting people's feelings. When gatekeeping is done in a healthy way, it asks logically critical questions of someone's claims in order to keep total chaos at bay. Take, for example, doctors. They have to pass a certain standard before they can receive the licensing to call themselves doctors. Now, you can certainly argue about the quality of how they're judged, but the point is that there is a specific standard set before someone can represent themselves like others within that group, and it keeps a certain level of quality expectation in the public eye. Doctors then do not also have to prove themselves to every person seeking their services and instead can just show the license that they have displayed. Now, I'm not suggesting that transgender people be licensed before they can call themselves that or have a genuine card-carrying status. I'm simply making the claim that without such a recognized standard, we need to be able to question those calling themselves transgender so we can ascertain if what they're saying and how they're behaving is something that we can reasonably assess are characteristic of the actual term. Currently, there is a wide range of transgender experience. There are many people claiming that they are transgender and when left unchallenged, go on to make changes to their bodies that they regret, or further create a public perception that is associated with rife mental illness and very disrespectful social practices. And this muddies the water for transgender individuals trying to create a positive public image. We've been led to believe that questioning is mean and not compassionate, which, when done in the narcissistic way, definitely is. I.e., you know that you can never be a man or a woman, right? All the while, we're abandoning the kind of questioning that is actually compassionate and encourages people to do their deep inner questioning that serves as a foundation for well-made decisions, something that people often do not do when it comes to their feelings. An example of this questioning could be, what are you trying to accomplish in taking hormone replacement therapy or having certain surgeries? Tone is very important here. A question like that encourages the person to really ponder why they're doing what they're doing, so they don't do something impulsively or for reasons that are likely to change with time or environment. Sort of like acting as a reality check, if you will. That ties into the larger concept, I believe, of why both left and right political ideologies exist to balance one another out. The right brain, liberal left ideologies are all about creativity, innovation, progressivism, and openness. The left brain, religious right, are all about stability, tradition, and security. You need both at different times for the best balance, and I'm all for new ideas so long as they can be rigorously tested and questioned first, or else you accept every new idea that comes your way and topple the whole system. So, in questioning this concept of transgenderism, I am holding a boundary that says as long as you can prove what you're saying with objective evidence, it's likely safe to accept, or at least as far as we have assessed the risk to be. The other example I alluded to earlier is where I refused to use Elliot's preferred pronouns until further proof is offered to substantiate the claims. A few people vocalized that they thought this was a disrespectful move, and I'm positive many more people thought the same thing. And this falls into the same concept that I've been talking about so far, which is that people get really fluffy when they are challenged. In this case, when someone tells another person what their preferred pronouns are right out of the gate, if this person isn't just following the newest trend, it indicates that they are keenly interested in controlling your perception and want a very specific image of themselves reflected back to them in order to validate their identity. Another link above for you to check out a video on that. This means that they don't give a rip how you feel. They just want to use you to mirror what they want to see, because they are terribly insecure and unable to stabilize their sense of self for themselves. and boy, can that get nasty fast. It's important to note here that I'm not talking about individuals who, when asked, will politely tell you what they would like. The person I'm talking about is the teal-haired, bowl-cut, body-modded TikTok trans who will righteously rant for minutes on why you should use the novelly created Z-Zim-Zer today and EM-ers to refer to them the next. So, let's wrap this up. When we see questioning someone or politely not obeying their requests with very valid objections as offensive, dismissing these as socially unacceptable moves, we fail to learn and grow. It's such a bind that we extend people the benefit of the doubt and call that a courtesy simply because so many people get upset when we don't validate them. So we talk around egos all day long because some people can't stand when others do not reflect back what they want to see. And I can't help but think how much further we could get if we didn't have to beat around the ego bush, not to mention push people to confront their own claims and get to know themselves. And again, I get it. I didn't used to take very kindly to being questioned because I grew up in an environment where questioning was weaponized. It was never used to be curious. It was used to insult and then was followed by further abuse. Needless to say, it took me a hot minute to get used to the idea that questioning could improve my life and to not get all fluffy about it. As long as someone follows up their behavior with sound reasoning, I applaud the intervention because I can learn from it. The idea that many eyeballs looking at something are better than just one pair. And we need to ask these questions to develop an idea of what transgenderism is. It's a practice of gatekeeping, because if it isn't defined, then it may as well not exist for all of our understanding of it. And this does not allow us to apply it in any meaningful, constructive, or helpful way. We're at the frontier of transgenderism, as well as understanding these toxic behavioral mechanisms that have kept us stagnant in societal improvement. And perhaps transgenderism is giving us a very tangible platform to begin to sort through all of it. At least, that's how I'm making use of it, always in pursuit of the best at the time.